please. Morales. Sullivan. Lee.
Here.
Childers. Gessler. Here. Owen. Here. McGrath.
Here. We're gonna have a little change up in the order tonight. We're going to have the updates from the superintendent prior to 207's best, if there are no objections.
Two things real quickly. One is I just want to note for everyone here in the audience tonight, District 207 lost a dear, dear friend last week when State Representative Rosemary Mulligan passed. Rosemary was a longtime state representative from Des Plaines, who was a good friend to District 207, a tremendous friend to the School-Based Health Center, to the Ed Foundation, and so we really want to extend our best wishes to her family for all of the thought and concern that she gave District 207 for many years. The other thing that I want to take out of order a little bit, before we start the Students of the Month, we have 3 wonderful students to honor this month, as we do every month. From time to time, it's nice for us to also honor the teachers that work with our students, and I have a very special award tonight for a teacher who would certainly not go looking for any kind of recognition like so many of our teachers that go above and beyond the call of duty. This particular teacher was in her classroom till 4:30, 5:30 one evening, 2 hours well past the time when could have gone home, but she was still working, taking care of commitments for that day, for the upcoming day. Had an interaction with a student in need, and went above and beyond the call of duty. Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to go into all of the full details, but what I will tell you is, had a student that was transported, went to the hospital with the student, stayed many, many hours after work to work on the safety and well-being of one of our students. Things like this happen every day in our schools. We are so blessed here in District 207. Just this week, 2 of our schools were named 2 of the top schools of diversity in the state of Illinois, Maine East and Maine West. And again, this is after last year, all 3 of our schools making the top schools in America list with the Washington Post. I know those rankings aren't always perfect, but the work that goes on with our students each and every day is just remarkable. So tonight, I want to honor one of our very best Maine West teacher, Jane Wisdom, from the English department. I'd like to honor her with a Superintendent's Award for her working above and beyond the call of duty for the sake of a student in need in a time of crisis. Again, this is not the kind of stuff that ever makes headlines, won't be in the newspaper, won't be reported, but things like this happen every day in our schools. And I thought it was fitting tonight that we recognize one of our teachers for the kind of stuff that makes a difference in the lives of our students each and every day. So with that, Superintendent's Award to Jane Wisdom from Maine West High School.
Best for improved performance. And we'll start with Maine South. Sean?
Thank you. I'll ask Matt DeLacy to stand. He's with us tonight in the back row. Matt, congratulations. Matt, I'm going to read a few nice words about you, and then we're going to give you a little bit of an honor. To know Matt DeLacy is to know one of our nicest and hardest working students in Maine South. When Matt joined us as a freshman, he faced many of the typical challenges that freshmen do, starting life in a large high school, venturing out into the complex world of teenagers that they create, shedding some dependence that's typical as you're moving from middle school to high school. And like so many of our students, Matt had some additional challenges that can make an already difficult transition seem insurmountable. But he's not your typical high school student. With the support of his family, our staff, and his friends, he has thrived in high school. As Matt started his high school career, he was placed in self-contained classes to support his transition. But it became apparent very early on that Matt had the intellectual ability to be successful in regular education setting along with his peers. Through hard work and the support of his family, Matt began his move to regular education. He was enrolled in all special education academic classes his freshman year, but sophomore year he took EMC, EMP at the regular level, with in-class support from a TA, as well as regular education electives during 9th, 10th, 11th grades. In 12th grade, he continued with Chemistry 1 and regular ed. This year, Matt's taking senior comp, Algebra 2, Modern America, internship, and graphic arts, all in a regular education setting. He's facing challenges socially as well, and the quiet freshman is now a proactive and engaged senior. As Mrs. Robinson stated, Matt DeLacy has greatly progressed socially and academically over the past 4 years. He advocates for himself and independently asks for help when he needs it. He used to sit and wait for a teacher to say something or ask him if he needed help with work. Once he has identified that he needs help, after trying on his own, he speaks up and asks for it. Matt's improved greatly in initiating conversations with others and being able to carry on conversations. He's made great gains in small talk. When working independently, Matt used to require prompting more frequently, but is now much more independent, maintaining his focus. Matt has progressed in self-direction and taking responsibility, and he works so hard and stays motivated to learn and do his best. He's a pleasure to work with. A special area of interest for Matt is math, in which he excels. His math teacher, Mrs. Mason, says, Matt embodies the attributes of every successful student. He's always engaged, he's an active learner. He asks questions immediately and wants to understand why he got something wrong. He's one of the hardest working students I've ever had in any Algebra 2 class, and he's truly a role model for his peers. He's one of the rare few students in this course who goes above and beyond and does even more than I ask of him, working on ALEKS topics even when he's mastering the minimum requirements for the week. I'm honored to be his teacher. I've known Mrs. DeLacy for 4 years now as well, and she's always been a supporter of our special education program and an advocate for not only Matt, but other students as well. She recently commented to me about Matt's progress. I do believe Matt has grown so much due to his participation in PBR and for being in the mainstream regular education classroom setting. Being a part of the regular education program has inspired and has allowed Matt to aspire to work like his peers. One thing I can say is Matt often works harder, longer, and better than some of the students that he's in class with. He also, over the years, has shown himself to have an excellent sense of humor, and every once in a while we'll give it to some of the guys in his classroom. And Mr. Walcott, who works with him frequently, has also said that he is incredibly proud of all the progress that Matt's made over 4 years. And we're really excited to see Matt move on to start to begin the journey to the next phase of his life. College and beyond is his plan. So with that, congratulations, Matt. We're extremely proud of you, and extremely proud to call you one of 207's best.
So tell us, Matt, what your plans are for next year, if you know yet?
You know what your plans are, Matt?
I continue taking classes here.
Congratulations. Very well.
Congratulations. Best of luck.
All right.
Next, ladies.
Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to introduce to you our 207's best, Marisol de la Tour. As I've said before, this is, I think probably all three principals feel the same way. This is kind of our favorite category of the year in terms of just a lot of really neat stories that go with kids in all three schools. So I put the word out with faculty. Got a few things back kind of via email, and then I got a few phone calls. And one of the phone calls was from one of our counselors who's here tonight, Chris Villalobos. Said, you know, got a student that I think would really be very, very deserving of this. Kind of told me a little bit about it. And again, sometimes this kind of deals with a lot of life for our students. So before we kind of go hanging things out there, I want to make sure that students are good with that. And I said, well, how's Marisol feel about it? She said, well, we talked to her and she's good. So, okay. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Marisol that actually started a couple of years before she came to Maine East. It was in the fall of her 7th grade year. She had an older brother who was a student at East who was killed and really kind of rocked the family in that period of time. Marisol started a couple of years later. She was in the integrated freshman literacy program. She started off and was doing well academically, but attendance was not so good. And second semester, by the end of the year, I mean, she really was pretty much not doing school at that point. She came back and see a little boy that came into her life around her sophomore year. And kind of helped her reset life. So there's a letter here. I'm going to read a little bit from it, but one of the things I didn't include written form was something that one of Marisol's teachers shared with me, and I talked to Marisol about it, and I said, well, would it be okay if I read your personal statement that she did for an English class for Wendy Reeds? She said, yeah, absolutely. And I think this really speaks to the kind of resolve, the resilience, the grit that Marisol has shown, particularly in these last 2.5, 3 years here. And I think she's got a nice sense of humor as well. Her 6-word memoir was, "My life's full of dirty diapers." Could be a metaphor for a lot of aspects of what she has dealt with in her life. Said, it started with the death of my brother in 2009. Since that phone call at 6:59, everything in my life went downhill. Death hit me hard, and I still think about him and what our household would be like with him to this day. Our relationship with my family hasn't been great since the tragedy occurred. My focus on academics began to decline at this time as a result from the negativity in the household. My family's trauma began to affect me as a person. My freshman year of high school, I did not do well in my classes at all. I know I was smart enough to be able to finish all my work on time and do well on tests, but my grades for my first semester were not strong because of the amount of absences I had. My grades did not motivate me to attend school at all second semester. I pretended that everything was okay, but it was not. 3 years later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. When I became pregnant, I knew that I had to step up with my academics. When I realized that my education is just as important for me as it is for my new family. I felt amazing and worked hard in school. During my junior year, my English teacher recommended me for AP Lit and Composition. It felt amazing to be recommended to take an AP English class because I didn't think I was capable of that. Ever since then, my confidence was boosted. I didn't take the AP English class because I was worried about the amount of work I would have to finish. I'm currently taking AP Psychology. It might not be hard for others who are taking the AP courses, but it's a bit challenging for me because I'm a full-time mother and student. My experiences have helped me grow as a person. I've overcome the negativity in my life. I realized how smart I actually am. No matter what, I never give up on my schoolwork. I try to complete everything on time. Having a baby makes it a challenge to focus on homework, but I've come too far in my school career to fail now, and I know I can persevere and continue with this work ethic into college. My son has been the reset button for my life. Because of my son, I'm ready to continue moving forward. I have such a positive mindset that I don't let negativity get a hold of me. Negative experiences earlier in my life have allowed me to realize that I can overcome anything that comes my way. Being the first individual in my family to go to college, I'm excited yet nervous because I don't know what's coming my way. No matter what happens, I'm confident that I'm able to overcome obstacles, create an amazing life for myself and my family. When she ended her freshman year, she had a GPA of .88. Currently has a 2.96 cumulative, but this last year she earned a 3.33, so you can see that she's really turned that around when you kind of consider everything she's got on her plate there. A number of staff members, she's got a great support system at Maine East. Chris kind of helped me out and put the call out for some information. We got a lot of people, and the common themes that keep coming back and back are her spirit, as I said, her resilience, her grit, her determination. She's always prepared. She works well with others. I think her students, the fellows in her class, really value what she has to say, what she has to offer. And I think she really is walking the walk in terms of the kind of life lessons that we want our students to come away with. So she refers to her little family. She's working hard. Sounds like she's been accepted to several colleges and waiting for a little more. She's going to tell you a bit about that. But I could go on and on. I won't. But Marisol De La Torre, we are extremely proud of you and wish you all the best. Who's here with you now?
My partner Arturo and my son that was just here. Who went out with my mother, Leticia and Gabriel, and my counselor from Maine East, Lydia Lobo. Well, so far I have been accepted into Concordia University, Northeastern Illinois University, and North Park University, and I'm just waiting to hear back from Loyola. And I'm planning on studying criminology or interior design, but for now I'm undecided with one of those two.
Outstanding. This is for your son. And this is for you. Congratulations, it's such an honor to meet you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Last but not least, Maine West, Audrey.
And I'd like to introduce to you Daniel De La Rosa Aguilar. So about a month ago, I got to meet Daniel because two of his teachers wrote up something called a Warrior Woo-Hoo at U of Maine West. And if a student has done something extraordinary, something worth noting, and that they think the principal should meet him for or her for, they can write up this Warrior Woo-Hoo. So I got two on the same day for Daniel. I called him down, and I read him what his teachers had said, and they had talked about how they couldn't believe how his performance had improved over from the year before to this year in his senior year. And Daniel accepted, he get a candy bar with this too, so he accepted his 2 candy bars. He was very humble about it, didn't say much, but just said, yeah, I really turned things around, things are going really well. Walked out, shook my hand, walked out of my office, and that was it for a while. And then when this award came up for Most Improved for 207's Best, 5 more teachers came forward in the nomination and said, you have to meet Daniel. Well, I just did, but he didn't tell me his story, so I called him back in, and he came back in like, what am I doing here again? And so I said, what's the story? Why does everybody think you are so improved? And we had an awesome conversation, and Daniel shared with me, do you want me to stop so you guys can share this? Or you want, so your mom can hear, or?
Yeah, les contamos sobre cómo empezó todo, cómo lo llamaron a la oficina, le empezaron a decir, o sí, qué es lo que pasó. Tus 2 maestras dijeron que has hecho muy bien, ya hablaron, le dieron su chocolate, y luego, un poco tiempo, empezó esto de que a ver quién nominaron, y 5 maestros empezaron a decir, quiero que me nominaran a mí, y esto es lo que pasó.
Okay, so Daniel went back to his freshman year and told me that things started to fall apart during his freshman year. There were some personal things going on at home. He stopped coming to school. When he did come to school, he would sit in the cafeteria and he'd go to class. The same kind of things happened during his entire sophomore year. That's when I remember Daniel's name, because he was in the dean's office often. The deans knew him, he was in trouble all the time, and just trouble at Maine West. And that's how I was like, I remember you, Daniel. And then Daniel kind of fell off the radar, and I asked Daniel what happened, and he said school wasn't for him, and he and his counselor decided that he should probably go to night school, that Maine West was not working out for him at the time. He had very few credits, if any, and was failing all of his classes. Go ahead. Got it all?
Están hablando sobre cómo él fue de cómo le dijo, que es lo que está en nuestro esta historia. Empezaron a decir, Daniel, en mi primer año de high school, yo tenía muchos problemas para pronunciar, cosas que no tenía. Yo no le agarraba mucha importancia ni a la escuela. Eso pasó lo mismo con su segundo año de escuela, que casi ya no iba, y ella le decía que se la pasaba en la oficina de los principales por malas razones. Así es como lo conocían en la escuela, por ser niño malo. Y también empezaron ya de empezar a contarle todas sus historias de que cómo eran las cosas que iban a hacer en su casa. Y es cuando dijo Dani que la escuela no era para él y decidió cambiarlo para la escuela de noche porque la escuela no era para él.
So he after just one semester in night school, he came home after that semester and he found his mom crying at the kitchen table, right? I think I have that right. And Daniel was pretty used to that because mom was crying often because of Daniel's behaviors and everything that was going on. But she had paper in her hand, And she was crying because he had all A's and B's in ninth school. He had one semester of complete success, was not in trouble, and was a different kid. I'll try and go with smaller chunks. So Daniel came back to Maine West and talked to his counselor, Mr. Nagarzansky, after just one semester and said, I want to come back. I want to come back. I know I can do this. Mr. Nagarzansky was pretty set against it because he was having such success. He said, are you sure? You're really successful here. You can continue. He said, no, I want to come back. So Daniel convincingly got Mr. Nagarzansky to say okay, and Daniel came back to Maine West. And since he's been back, after that one semester in night school, he has gotten all A's and B's in every single class, and he's going to graduate on time. All right.
Después de convencerlo, lo dejaron, regresó a la escuela y ahorita desde que regresó son puras así de lo que tiene en la escuela y que va a poder agarrar bien.
So when Daniel tells you this story, he's still very, very humble about it, but you can tell he's very, very proud because he did this. He did this on his own. He realized if I keep going down the path I'm going, it's not going to be good for me. It is not going to be good. So he is on target to graduate. No one is more proud of you than obviously your mom and me. Mr. Nagarzansky would be thrilled. Sorry. And Maine West is extremely proud of you. Okay. When we brought up Daniel's name at executive committee, where the deans and the assistant principals are, I brought his name up and nobody knew the name. And I said, Daniel, you remember the name from before? Well, we have a new dean. Daniel has a new dean who's been here for 2 years. Hasn't even met Daniel, which is awesome. Daniel hasn't even met his dean. The dean had no idea who Daniel was because Daniel has done such an outstanding job. So congratulations, and on behalf of all of Maine West, we are very proud of you. Okay, so, yes. So tell us who's here tonight with you.
So that's my girlfriend.
And thank you for translating for me.
This is my mom and my dad. Unfortunately, things happen. We couldn't meet it.
Very much. It was a huge part of my life that got affected by it. Even though you're still calm, you're still there for me, you're still support me no matter what. It was something that I never saw coming, which was them getting separated. I took this step of just not going to school. He said, stay home, didn't do anything. And then I started realizing, I started growing up, I started focusing more. I took the step of just going back to school, getting stuff together. And fortunately, this was going on, doing really good. I know that I could have done it, but I just didn't have the guts to do it. I just didn't want to go to school anymore, and I just decided that, you know what, I'm going to huge step in my life. You know, keep studying and going forward.
Going in the right direction. Awesome. So what are your plans next year?
I'm thinking of doing 2 years, college associates. And get transferred to Western University, become a detective.
Awesome.
The reason why I want to do it is because it runs in my family. My dad was a police officer back in Mexico, so was his brother, police officer in Mexico.
I wanna do it, I wanna take that step and become a
And you're on your way. Nice job. Awesome job.
If the students and the principals would like to step out into the hall, we'd like to get some pictures. This is also your chance to leave the meeting now if you so choose. You don't have to stay for the business part. So if you just all step out in the hall with Mr. Berry, he's going to take some pictures. Thank you very much and congratulations to all of you.
That's a great question.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, could I give you a tour?
Next on the agenda are public comments. I have two cards here. First is Alex Jensen. Alex, happy to have your comments. If you could just please limit your comments to 3 minutes, please, that would be appreciated.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm currently a senior here at Maine South, and this is actually something I've experienced all 4 years, and I see other kids' experiences. The doors, especially those along at the end of the A-wing and on the facing this side of the school during winter, is that a lot of part of this is just because kids either stuff their jackets in their lockers and don't take it out of them, or they just dress inappropriately for winter. But I see a lot of kids huddling outside and standing in front of doorways for so long, mostly because their kids coming from lunch trying to get to class on time and trying to build in time for them to either get to where they're going because they're going a long distance, or trying to at least have a minute or two to catch up with friends or do whatever they need to do. And one of the things that I think might improve this, because just today I was seeing two friends huddling each other together as they were walking, and they rushed in the door the moment the green light came on the lock. And I was wondering if there's any way to potentially, at least during the winter, and make it so that the lock opens somewhat earlier before the bell, just so that way there could be a chance for, and maybe have the teachers posted at some of the doors to mitigate the security option, so that then there'd be a chance for them to at least warm up a bit before running off to class.
Thank you.
I'm seeing you tomorrow, Alex, and I'll give you sign.
Mr. Gary Novak. Sure. Please.
I didn't mean to interrupt the nice love fest here. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong. But I have this school digger in front of me. And I always looked up, I went to Maine South. I grew up here, we moved here in 1968 because of the schools. Or my parents did, and I was a kid, obviously. I don't. But I'd like to know why my taxes for my schools are skyrocketing, and our schools are going like this on School Digger. Now, Maine East, or Maine South is ranked 33rd in the state, with a school like Lane Tech ranked 5th. And we have all these Chicago schools ahead of us. Now, I guarantee you, these guys aren't paying the taxes we're paying. Yet, we're dropping. Maine East is ranked 225, Maine West is 205. I really don't know much about those two schools. I wasn't here. But what prompted me to come here today, too, was the fact that everybody I speak to at cocktail parties, over the last month, okay, nobody's sending our kids here. They're sending them to Resurrection. They're sending them to Loyola, Northwood Prep, in by Gulf Mill. Legal Maine South wasn't stacking up anymore. And that really bothers me because I went here. And I have not heard too many good things about the school. When I speak to teachers, because I know a lot of them, they say the morale is in the tank. But my taxes are here, and we're doing this. That's my comment. I'm done.
Thank you.
And there's a break for those kids.
Next item is any additional updates from superintendent?
Just real quickly, we got grants at East and West for the CIEE, and unfortunately the name of that one escapes me at the moment, but what it is for our students to have the opportunity to travel abroad in the summertime. CIE has a long-standing relationship with schools, and they do summer travel program, so kids have an opportunity to win scholarship money to help go overseas in the summer, so I just wanted to mention that.
Overseas and Portland, Oregon.
And Portland, Oregon.
And New York.
Why miss the New York one?
Yeah. Yes, all over the places, all nice places.
So what average of how many students from our school?
I think the grants are $20,000, which is prorated on the need, based on need and how many apply, is my
It
understanding.
can be anywhere from any scholarship can range from 10% to 100% with a cap of 20,000 per school that was awarded.
And the tuition is about 45,000.
Yeah.
For this program, it's 4 weeks.
Also on international education.
Thank you.
And there is, I know on the Maine West website, I don't know if you have yours up yet, but there's a link right here. If you just click on this, there's a lot of information right on the Maine West homepage. So if you look it up, you can find a lot more information about it and all the different places that folks would go.
The reason I brought up Portland was not to correct you on international. I just thought it was so important that it isn't always overseas.
Yes.
It's other parts
Yes.
of the world, including places in the United States.
Yes, absolutely, and Portland is lovely, and so is New York, and I probably missed a few other ones in there as well. What I do know is kids get to travel in the summer, and we got some grants to help
great.
provide opportunities, hopefully. And actually, we have, our teachers can actually apply to go overseas as well, into Portland, not bad.
So this happens like after summer vacation?
It's during summer vacation.
Vacation. And I guess, the word of mouth or let the students know.
They're advertising, yes, it's been out to the schools, yep, hitting it hard.
I think this is stuff like opportunity for students to have a global and also domestic experience. Stuff like
Next up is board member updates. Any board member updates this month? Finally, the Joint Finance Building and Grounds Committee meeting from December 15th. Sean and Papa.
When you report it, jump shit up.
I'll correct you as you go on.
Which is actually how the meeting went. See, if you correct me, I'll let you know. But it went well. We had a number of items, about a half dozen, that really applied to both buildings as well as finance issues, and therefore we didn't want to repeat them. We had a packed meeting because, of course, we were joined by Paula, and Jim was on the phone because he was at a business meeting. But all of the items were forwarded to the board with a recommendation for approval. Mary's been going into detail, but we did review the Quest contract extension, the CBC health insurance renewal as a consultant. We looked at the budget parameters, the fiscal forecast and the scorecard, the PTAB summary, the fact that legal appeals based on that. And the largest item after Scrimp was the Maine West Athletic Edition, which has big impact both on finance and buildings, and that's where we are to support that. That's it for me. And how much would I know? Okay. Can I have that in minutes?
We'll make sure that's the first.
Just very quickly, the Quest contract, so renewal was, generally speaking, the level of scores has been what, 90, 92, 95? How are their rates has been?
Less than that, they're in the 80s, they're passing, but the problem is that it's not at a level that we expect it to be, especially for the two schools that are in Park Ridge. We've got excellent scores coming out of Maine West. I know Audrey will continue to take credit for everything excellent that occurs at Maine West.
She cleans the cafeteria every day at the end of lunch.
And of course, I also like it noted that it wasn't just Audrey's story that got to her, she was already crying before the other kids had stopped. But, our expectation is that whoever's doing the food service is doing it at 100%. So that's our objective, is we're trying to get them up there. And there are certain duties that we have to do in order to tender it to them in a proper way and reinforce their ability to supervise and control their employees, because there are no longer any employees within the food service area that belong to the school district. All those employees are Quest employees. So therefore, we do not want them to feel restricted by the fact that anybody had a history here at the high school. We expect them to achieve the absolute highest possible scores. Our expectation is that be above 95. That's the minimum we're looking for. And quite frankly, in Park Ridge, they should be able to achieve 98, 99s, or 100s.
And I also read quiz, all those employees are from the quiz, therefore, also at the same time, they are doing a child safety security check of all the individuals to make sure that they will be able to attend, help serve the students
Yes.
in our school.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is monthly status of finances. Mary.
In your board packet is the November financial report. Of note is that we're going to need to do the transfer to the debt service fund for the abatement, which is why it has a negative fund balance. With that exception, all items are within budget. The next item is the PTAP summary. What we do is, since we started interviewing the Property Tax Appeals Board in 2003, we provide you with an annual summary of refunds that were requested, how many are outstanding, how many are settled, the settlement amount, and the amount of revenue preserved, as well as the cost for that intervention. And you can see that our cost ranges between $20,000 to about $50,000, but we've been preserving revenue of several $100,000 by intervening in PTAP. The other items are the financial scorecard, which we started about 2 years ago. It's just a benchmark in terms of how we're doing with our performance, where we're spending the money, where we're getting our revenue, and how we compare to those high school districts that beat us, as well as our SCRIMP, which is our property liability workers' comp pool renewal. The property liability renewal is on a January 1st basis. Our cost went up about 2.7%. It's on a 5-year rolling history of our losses. So we've been doing pretty well at a 2.7% increase. And the final item is the budget parameters and timeline for 2015-16. The adoption of the tax levy actually represents the kickoff of next year's budget. Our goal is to provide a deficit of no more than $8.5 million. That $8.5 million is driven by our one-time capital construction projects, primarily the Maine West Athletic Addition, which is about a $10 million project. I'll take any questions that anybody has on these financial items.
On the PTAB, on your memo dated January 5th, is there still a possibility of getting some revenue for 2011 and 2012, since that number is so small?
Oh, yeah.
To 2010?
What happened, if you look at the column that's labeled outstanding,
Yeah.
those are the cases that have not settled yet.
Oh, good.
So we've generally preserved about 1/3 of the revenue, so we should see when those cases settle, about 1/3 of that preserved in terms of revenue.
Oh, great. Okay.
Sometimes a number of cases this year, based on our evidence and our appraisals, the appellant has withdrawn their appeal, in which case then we see 100% of that revenue preserved.
Okay. And then in the memo before that, you said our costs for doing this were divided with the feeder districts and Randbeck, and it was between 30 and 40,000. So on that memo I referenced, cost to district per calendar year, we're looking at the 31,000 total. Is that?
That is our share.
So that 30 to 40 is our share, not
divided.
It's not divided by 3.
Correct. And
Total amount.
it's always divided by 2 because a property is either ours and 62s or ours and 63 or ours and 64.
Right.
So we split it 50-50 with whoever is the feeder district.
Right, right. Okay, so that other memo, the way I read it, it was 30 to 40,000 divided.
Right.
And it's not.
These are truly our costs,
Okay.
which is 50%
Totally
of the
different
total cost.
figure.
But
Okay.
also in terms of the revenue preserved, that's just our revenue preserved, not the total revenue preserved.
Thanks for clarifying.
Are there any other questions for Mary? Thank you very much, Mary. Next up is instructional services. Barb, please.
Yes, we have 2 short reports that are typical of this time of the year. The first one is our reporting out on our Illinois State Scholars, which is a selection based on SAT, ACT, and our Prairie State scores, and our class rank at the end of the January year. And you can see there a table of the numbers for each school over the past 6 years. This is based on different cohorts of students who go through, and thus we ebb and flow in that list. This represents the top 10% of the state's high school seniors from the entire state of Illinois. The benefit is that it does make students eligible to apply for a monetary award program, or at least enter that competition pool. The second report is the student activity participation report, and these are simply the counts that we present to you of participation in extracurricular activities, reminding us that our school district is about the whole student and much more than just the classroom. As we've looked at this over the years, some of the trends we've noticed are that the peak years of participation tend to be the freshman and sophomore years. There are different sports and clubs that sort of ebb and flow depending on what's popular at the time, or particular sponsors who are leading them, or curricula that they may be attached to. I'd also like to point out that the shading represents those activities or sports that have stipends related to them, but you'll see the number of activities that are not shaded, and those are ones in which our teachers are volunteering, getting RIF points for that, but they are not on stipends. So we have a lot of participation from our teachers working with our students in a variety of capacities. Any questions on either of these 2 reports?
Just want to quickly share, Dr. Berg, this is a very interesting data that you have provided us. It's very informative too at the same time. And also it's great to see that students are not only concerned about the scores itself, but engagement, which is very heart-touching, because it is critically important for students to really get engaged through school's experience, school's life, to get into the step by step and so on. And when we're looking at the other global, other school institutions comparison, I think the uniqueness, the positive thing about our school is that we have so many interesting extracurricular programs and activities that no one or no other schools, maybe from overseas, could offer. So in deference to the comparison, we are definitely would like to see more of encouragement of participating the students to engage with all these extracurricular programs and so on. At the same time, is there any other school or district support we can continuously provide to these students so they can continuously engage in positive way?
I think you're right in noting that this is one of the distinctions of this district, at least in my experience. I haven't seen this board ever sort of reject a request for a club or activity that's going to support students who come forward with that. I think, there is a lot of existing support, and I know the 3 principals are focused on almost trying trying to find a way for all students to find a home in the school outside of the classroom.
Any other questions or comments on the instructional services? Thank you, Barb. Next up, other items, monthly update employee request, Ken?
Through this month, all of these have been processed, the process being processed.
Thank you. Next item, I have a motion on 7A through F, the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, please take the roll, please.
Lee.
Aye.
Childers. Morales. Owen. Bessler. Sullivan. McGrath.
Aye. Item 8, resolution waiving board policy 1710-01, renaming of the Alternative Resource Center as the Ralph J. Frost Academy. Can I have a motion,
I
please?
so moved.
Sean, thank you. Ken?
And I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Special Ed Director Joe Carlson and our Department Chairman Ed Pazinski. And the topic goes back many number of years. In fact, it goes back at least back to the years when ARC was located here at Maine South High School, and the kids would go out of the building and see our refuse containers that had the initials ARC on them. So there's been a fair amount of discussion about changing the name for a long time. As we're moving into a new facility that's being designed specifically to help provide a really good space for the program and hopefully for great improvements, and this is Mr. Pazinski's first year, we tasked Mr. Pazinski and the students at ARC, as well as the staff, with coming up with a recommendation for a name change. So with that, Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, real quick, I wanted to introduce two of my students that came with me, Catherine and Annie. Just wave. I promised I wouldn't make them say Thanks for coming. Yeah, we worked over the course of the semester, really in two phases. We threw a bunch of names down with, you name it. We were throwing names on the table. But ultimately, getting a bunch of information about Ralph J. Frost and the former assistant superintendent. One thing that stood out to me is he was instrumental in really the beginning of the co-op, special ed co-op, which I thought was really cool, and kind of going through some of the information packets and some of the kind of articles. So we thought that was really a neat thing. So then we went into phase 2, kind of tying his name to what could be the name of the school. Ultimately came up with Ralph J. Frost Academy, RJF, some of those things that we thought had some good roots to it. So with that, a school also needs a mascot. We participate in CALE, the Chicago Alternative Education League. It's really a wonderful opportunity for our kids to get out, participate in athletics, also some other interscholastic sports like the chess team, although we're not yet involved in that. But we're excited about those opportunities, and it's nice for our kids to have a name. And with this year coming up with, I believe, the 75th anniversary of the Maine Flyer, which was a real interesting thing that the students at Maine Township did back in 1944, I believe, if I remember correctly, raising over $500,000, back in 1944. It's a significant amount of money for one of the planes to be named the Maine Flyer. And we thought that tying both these two names together would be great to bring some of the history as well as moving forward into a new facility, kind of rebranding it and giving our kids an opportunity to have something to call home for their school. So that's really been the process. It was fun. We are moving in a couple of weeks, which is also another adventure, packing up the school mid-year, but we're making do, right? So we're excited about that opportunity to start in a couple of weeks. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we have a motion to rename the Alternative Resource Center as the Ralph J. Frost Academy, and that includes adopting the nickname Flyers. Are there any questions or comments about we're waiving a first reading on this? Is that right? Any questions, comments?
Is that affiliated with the name of the building, or will the building be a separate name?
Yes, it'll be the program, the Alternative Resource Program will be will rename that school, just as it's been called the Alternative Resource Center. It'll be the Ralph J. Frost Academy for that program.
And how about the
Yet to be determined, I suppose we could do that as well, but this.
So that's a separate decision.
Yeah.
Administration side, right now.
Yeah. But this was, again, as Eddie, the more we researched, and Ralph actually served in the same capacity that Dr. DeVarga and I have served in, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. A lot of people think he was the superintendent, but he wasn't, just a very beloved gentleman. Was the first to bring electronic attendance to a school district in Illinois, did some really innovative things. As Eddie said, started the co-op program, so it seemed a really natural fit as we were looking at an opportunity to make a little bit better name, and Eddie's trying to do a good job of establishing some new identity for the program, and so we're really pleased with that as well.
Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, can you take the roll, please?
Bessler. Lee. Morales. Sullivan. Owen. Childers. McGrath.
Aye. Next up on the agenda is item 9, approval of bids and awarding of contracts for Quest Food Management Services and corporate benefit consultants. Can I have a motion, please? Second. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments, anything, Mary, that you would like to add to the discussion from the Finance Committee?
Both of these contracts are extensions of existing contracts. Both providers are delivering very good service to the district and these performance. Quest is including $200,000 in capital improvements so that we can upgrade the look of some of the cafeterias.
Any other comments from the Buildings and Ground or Finance?
Did they, Quest specifically kind of mention that 200,000 K will be going to what kind of capital improvement? Any specific items?
They're looking at lighting, they're looking, I mean, we've listed a laundry list of items and we'll work with each of the buildings to determine which items will best suit that building. They're talking about potentially even allocating some of that if we need to equipment.
You had photos in there. That's
We had,
some of
and
the-
those were just examples
Right.
of the types of things they could do in terms of lighting and paint and sneeze guards and panels.
And also this 200K investment will be not annually, probably not. Right?
No, it's at the start, but it would be for the full 5 years of the contract.
And how long have you been had with the Quest? Okay, another 5 years?
5 years, all schools have been with Quest for 5 years. I'm not sure which one started with Quest, whether it was West or East. West started with Quest, I think, almost 10 years ago. And then several years later, East was added. And then 5 years later, South was added.
So Quest is providing this service to all 3 schools in our district?
Yes.
On facilities rental, the $700,000, is Quest relationship part of that 700?
Well, okay, so
When we make 700,000 on facilities rental,
what we will make is the rental guarantee, which is $115,000 per year.
so the 115 is part of the 700?
I'm not sure where you're getting $700,000.
On another report you have, and it has,
So when you take a look at the total investment, it's 115,000 times 5, plus 200,000,
Right.
which is above 700,000. So we will see, in terms of capital improvements or rental guarantee, about $700,000 from this contract.
you probably, it shouldn't be related to, if we're talking about Quest, I should ask that question, the question I have separately. It's not about Quest. The Quest subject is about facilities rental and money. We have revenue because of rentals. That's where I'm
Right,
coming from.
and we deposit this revenue into our food service area. So it's separate, we have 2 revenue accounts. One's a rental, which is the rental of our buildings. This one we earmark toward food service.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, so we are paying the Quest 115,000 annually?
No,
Okay.
Quest is paying us $115,000 annually. We are completely out of the food service business, Quest runs the operations, takes in all of the revenue, is responsible for all the expenditures. We are responsible for the equipment and some cleaning, but we did this as a move. Before we moved to the rental agreement for food services, we were spending about $250,000 a year on food service. So this is an over $300,000 swing in terms of our revenue, because we weren't paying the $250,000 out anymore, and we were taking in about another $100,000 a year.
And didn't they have some jobs, some catering assignments from last year that they were able to pass on revenue to us?
Right,
like
so
$10,000 or
they
$20,000.
satellite out of Maine West and Maine South to other schools. And that is why they wanted to kind of lock this contract in now, so that they could go after business this spring for next year. And every time they satellite, we get about $10,000 additional revenue. That's not included in the $115,000.
So from the revenue, actually, the Quist is making the money generally from the students actually, right? Students pay for their lunch fees and everything. And the state funding possibly will be contributing some of the money too? Yes,
The only state program we participate in is the special milk program, so we take a reduction in the price of our milk and have the state subsidize that. We don't participate in the federal, federal lunch program because of the restrictions that it has on it, but because we don't participate, that's why Quest pays for and feeds the free and reduced population, so that's not a cost to us.
That's definitely helpful, and that's a great thing. But at the same time, just an idea, since they're contributing $200,000 from their revenue, which they're making their money and contributing back to our school, I'm thinking maybe what if the possibility of saving the cost of the students' lunch or the cafeteria fee, and instead of, we do not have to receive, say, $200,000 money. Because basically as a business, in order for them to contribute $200,000, they have to make kind of money from the students' pocket eventually, one way or another. So I'm thinking maybe if we can somehow give a less burden to the students' financial lunch money or so, and then we do not really have to really request for that extra money to invest.
And this is one of those things that we discussed at the finance committee. Part of the problem is that we still have a burden in terms of providing the maintenance, cleaning the cafeteria areas up, providing the machinery. If something breaks down, we have to fix it. This is really just offsetting those costs. The 115 is spread out over all 3 schools in terms of coming in here. So you got to look at a third of that price to offset those expenses. And custodial expenses aren't cheap necessarily. The $200,000 in improvements, that's spread out over the 5-year period over the 3 schools. So it's really a minimal increase, but it allows us to provide what we're expecting them, which is a top-notch food service program for the students.
The other thing I should point out is one of the requirements in the contract is that there are value meals at each of the buildings, so that for a reasonable price, a student can get a full lunch program. Now, there are other options for students as well. So if you want to buy a $5 hamburger with french fries, you can certainly do that. But if you want to get a $3 meal at lunch, you can do that. And that is one of our requirements, so that those students who are at a level above the free and reduced level, but are still, money is tight, they can get the value meal and have a pretty decent lunch.
Right. At the same time, we can still control with the Quest regarding the health-conscious food-related products, correct?
Correct.
So we can continuously serve high school students a healthy meal instead of cheap junk, whatever the meal that school. Thank you.
Are there any other questions about Quest or corporate benefit consultants? Hearing none, Judy, can you call the roll, please?
Sullivan?
Aye.
Owen? Aye. Morales?
Aye.
Lee? Childers?
Aye.
Bessler? Aye. McGrath?
Aye. Item 10, new course proposals. Can I have a motion on the new course proposal? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Barb, this was presented last month.
second reading of these courses. So I'll entertain any questions and also remind you that these courses do come up through the buildings and then to instructional team. They work their way from the department in many cases through the MCCs, and we do have two of our MCC chairs here this evening. Audrey chairs the English MCC and can answer some questions about the English course. And Sean is the chair of our social science MCC, in case there's any questions about those courses. But I'll be glad to entertain any questions as well on these proposals. We're looking for approval tonight. These will be courses that we want students to have the availability to sign up.
This is second reading.
This is the second reading.
So we had it here
They were here in December.
You may have answered this already, but how long is the pilot for one school year before you decide to?
Generally, we'll evaluate as it goes next year.
Question on the physics, AP physics. There will be now AP physics that can be taken junior year and also then senior year, is that right?
Yes.
And so there'll really be kind of 3 AP physics exams, because I think the senior year AP physics has 2 components, 2 AP components.
It's got electricity and magnetism, and then mechanics are the 2 components to the senior
And you get
test.
you get 2 scores though.
Correct, and that's a calculus-based course. The junior level course is not calculus-based, so it opens up an opportunity for AP testing for a larger number of kids who aren't on the calculus track.
Because they can take it senior year, for example.
Well, some of these kids, even by the time they're senior, they're not on the calculus track in math, and they would not be able to take the AP physics class at all as senior.
We think this is a way, I think, to expand the AP offerings to a wider number of students.
When we add the AP classes, do we do analysis of how many colleges are accepting? Because since there's a downtrend of colleges accepting AP credit, do we do an analysis or some kind of assessment of
You know, we've tried
how
to do
many are
that,
accepted?
but if you just take U of I, for example, depending on the college that you apply to, it's such a range of answers there as to which college will accept what credit. Will they accept a 3? Will they accept a 4? Will they accept a 5? So it's kind of difficult to provide that sort of summary answer.
The problem with AP is it's a little bit like the housing market. And if you study AP for the last 15 or 20 years, you've literally seen 7%, 8%, 10%, 11% growth in enrollment year over year. And what we're seeing anecdotally and probably measurably is that school after school after school is saying no, 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 no. So this is a good conversation for kind of what comes next. I've made no secret about it. I think in the long run, we serve our students better if we could pivot to a dual credit based program where students got an actual transcript as well as a high school diploma. Now, the gentleman that spoke tonight pointed out, now that you did look and see that Digger doesn't, they don't do them on AP testing, so it's not necessarily a methodology. The major rankings, Washington Post again, which all 3 of our schools made last year, the U.S. News and World, which has been around a long time, and Newsweek, those primarily really measure the value of your AP program. So we just have to understand that right now, if those national rankings matter, the currency that matters in those national rankings is the strength of our AP program, of which District 207 has one of the best in the nation. However, as more and more of our kids are paying for those exams, and then they aren't being accepted for college credit, I think we're going to have to wrestle with this in terms of, you know, how long do we keep growing our AP program when it's really, you know, the program in some ways is losing a lot of its cachet for our students. And we've been working on our career pathways pivot, and one of the significant elements there is the $1 trillion of debt that our kids hold. How do we make a difference in the debt profile of our students? Well, dual credits clearly contribute to the benefit of our students and families, much more so than AP does, particularly if you're paying for an AP exam that your student's not getting credit for anyway. But right now, the sentiment expressed by the gentleman this evening, which is there's a sense that our schools are declining, that's really not the case. But if we abandon our AP program, that will be the case. So we have to weigh the value of those things against what's best for our kids.
And with the AP Italian, are all languages AP now, have an AP option? Or are there any languages that do not?
All the languages we offer do.
Any of our kids can take any of the language
Mandarin
AP,
does,
whether they're in the
Spanish,
AP
French.
class or not. That I do know.
Yes.
But Italian, there wasn't an AP option, for instance, when my daughter graduated from college.
There's not always an AP class that goes along with the language. However, if you take a level 5 or level 5 accelerated, which might be the class,
Okay.
you're pretty well prepared to take the AP exam.
And I thought there wasn't.
We just now have the numbers to actually support an AP Italian, and last year we now have the numbers to fully support an AP Spanish. So.
One more question on the American government change. We're eliminating an AP class, is that correct here?
Technically, we're not eliminating, we're divorcing the Constitution team from the AP class. So if enough students were to select AP Comparative Politics and Government, we would run that class.
Okay, and I've had some comments, just people a little bit concerned about this as a change from what's been done in the past with the Constitution team. Can you just talk a little bit about the process that you kind of went through to make this decision?
Well, one of the things that we looked at was AP performance related to that particular course, which lagged behind our expectations for an AP course. Meaning it didn't meet our level of number of threes being met by the students who took that class. One of the things that we were trying to do was take the We the People curriculum, that's the Constitution team, basically, their curriculum, and mesh that with AP Comparative. And we weren't getting the results we were looking for. We started to look, and the other thing that was happening too is we were putting kids in a position where, because it was linked to AP, and we were hand selecting the AP kids who were going to win the Constitution team, we were cutting some kids out of a process that wasn't particularly necessarily fair. And so we decided what would happen if we divorced those two, created a separate class that covered American government but also taught the We the People curriculum. And we met with kids. We met with every kid who was slated to take AP this year. And they were, one of my concerns were, would kids still be interested in a course that didn't carry the weight of the AP name? And actually their answer was, yes, this is about the Constitution team for us. So we felt this was a kind of a win-win where we could maintain an AP class as a pure AP class, but also offer kids that opportunity to earn American government credit, but also experience the Constitution team experience.
Question. I know it's not on this month's this year's agenda reference to the course proposal, but do we have any timeline or idea of roughly when possibly related to world history or social science might bring it out to such to make that decision on when we are going to choose a particular books related to
No,
those
we don't have a strict timeline, it kind of bubbles up as needs arise or
A change for that book has not really come up.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that comes from the curriculum team, that team within each individual building. Each year we're in that process right now, and it's kind of up to that team to determine whether or not the resources are meeting their needs or not at that point. And if they determine that they're not meeting their needs, then there's a proposal process and their approval process that ultimately ends up with the board approving, like we're doing the next item.
They're from individual schools, of course, right?
Correct.
Although we have tried,
We've done a much better job
of trying to make sure that we aren't adopting radically different things in the building. We've tried to, and actually science has been really good about this.
Especially as we've gone digital,
Yeah.
we've had a lot more agreement than disagreement in resources.
And we've actually,
right?
and we're actually meshing our curriculum here at South to match West curriculum in the freshman year for World Culture School course. So we're now, as of next year, we'll be aligned with Maine West as well. So we'll all be using the same textbooks at that point at the freshman level for that course.
It appears we're being reactive when we address things as they bubble up, and with what Jim has mentioned and some thoughts I have, it'd be kind of nice to look out and see how we can go towards something rather than react.
I don't think that is at all, that might be how it appears, but I don't think that's how the teams actually function. They're very proactive, I mean, the fact that.
Oh, because I didn't get that sense.
No, you may not just from the way we described it, but the fact that we have more digital textbooks in place than any other high school district I know across the U.S. with a change of over 100 resources over the last 3 years is
Well,
hugely
digital
progressive.
textbooks isn't what I'm talking about.
But I think, Mary, I think your issue is the process of textbook adoption, if I'm hearing you right. There's a normal process, it's pretty common that when a textbook is adopted, it's usually a 5 or 6 year period. And actually, some of that is just based on the economics of traditionally, that you adopt a textbook and you prorated those costs over 5 or 6 year periods so that the book can pay for itself. And we had a method here where actually our students were selling the books back. So if we were turning books over every year or so, then the books became obsolete and folks had wasted money. We've been able to, with our process, at least when we were doing hard copy books, to make the economics of it also work, so that we weren't turning books over every year and people were spending 124 textbook that the next year had no value whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that at all.
Mary, I think one of the things that you have to recognize too is that we react to what our national and state learning standards are.
Well, I noticed your rationales in there were Common Core. That was the reference to why things were done.
And so very proactively, we look at those standards and examine our curriculum to see where there's an alignment or a misalignment. We look at our high stakes test scores and our unit scores and so forth and so on, and we try to address that proactively by improving our curriculum and finding the best materials and the best practices out there to do so. So I don't think it's a reactive.
So the bubble up term, I should get rid of that.
What I was trying to describe was that it was the people in the front line who are working with their department chairman, they're going to the conferences, they're reading the current literature, they're looking at their standards, and it works its way from the building up to district, usually after it's been vetted many times through those discussions and review processes. That's what I probably shouldn't use the word bubble up. That may have sounded reactive, but it isn't reactive at all. It's very thoughtful and it's very forward-looking and supported too by the media that we're using to have available access to all students for those materials.
I feel as a board member, I hear about it and learn about it after it's all been discussed. And not that I want to be involved in the minutia of it, but it just seems there's a big gap of, okay, everyone's talked about it, they've gone to conferences, and then all of a sudden we're asked to vote on something. And I feel there's a missing part where we need to at least be aware of it more. And I've heard Jim bring up this sometimes. I'm sensitive about it. So I would just suggest that, and as the committee chair, I will take responsibility for saying, Barbara, can we talk about these things?
Sure.
Can we plan these things? So there is more conversation, not necessarily changing the answer, but definitely more conversation. So we as board members have more active responsibility in why we're voting for what we're voting.
We can work on giving you more information.
Are there any other questions or comments on the proposals before us tonight on the item? Hearing none, Judy, can you call the roll, please?
Childers? Aye. Lee?
Aye.
Morales? Bessler? Aye. Owen? Aye. Sullivan? McGrath?
Aye. And a motion on item 11, textbook adoption for the textbook, I think, for the upcoming semester. Is that
Correct.
Second? All right, thank you.
This month.
Thank you.
These are the same materials we brought to you the last month, so that you could review them, and the public had a month to review those materials and provide any questions. No questions came to me over the last month from the public that I had to address. These were, as we just discussed, came from the process from our to you in December, to be approved during the second reading here in January, to go into effect for second semester. If there's any questions, please entertain.
Any questions? Hearing none, Judy, can you call the roll, please?
Morales. Childers. Owen. Lee. Fessler. Sullivan. McGrath.
Aye. Item up is calendar items. Do you have any additions to the calendars for any committee meetings or?
I'll be contacting the policy committee members. We still have a brief meeting to go through a couple policies that I think might have already been vetted through the finance committee, but
We might be having an additional employee relations.
I'll be in contact with those members.
Okay. Dave, could you look and see if there are any cards for any public comments? One comment.
Eric Patterson, 940 Foster Street. In my hands is a $250 camera with a small mount pole. And over the winter break, I took it upon myself to go to Hardwood Classic. And the district, or a former colleague of mine, is now on the, communications team. If you don't remember Jen Delgado. She's real big with District 214 with their social media efforts, working behind the scenes with a PR practitioner that's making a pretty hefty amount of money. And I covered 4 Niles North basketball games leading up to the Niles North Maine East basketball game that's going to be happening later this month. I don't like smiling. We had a former coach whose father was a coach at, I think, Maine West and then Maine North, and then he was my gym teacher, as well as like the football coach when I was at Maine East. The whole time I was at Maine East, we never won football. People used to laugh about that. Coach Corey's going to be leaving. His son, I think Woody, is going to be a senior next year, so I guess the Corey legacy is going to be dissolving at the end of the 16th school year. But when I shot these games, and just the reaction I got by social media, I came to the revelation, I guess, that we should start looking at electives. You know, this month is an annual time when you basically look at textbooks and electives and all different groups and what have you. And I really think from the printing program that I was involved with back in the day, that this board and the individual schools, and I guess the committees within the schools should start looking at things in the digital age, such as utilizing media, utilizing social media, and broadcasting to basically increase school spirit. Something that I personally did not have at the East, but a lot of students didn't have at the East. Maine South is very strong with school spirit, Maine West is very strong with school spirit, particularly with the boosters. So I think there should be a district-wide initiative to look at utilizing digital media. I think they touched on it tonight. Utilizing a lot of digital textbooks and what have you. We really should tap into utilizing the Facebook page and feed that into a Twitter page. District 219 is starting to evolve with that slowly, but slowly just have all the different groups start coming together and start utilizing technology like this. Because they won their first game, Niles North, and I produced a video, I guess, within hours after that game, and it went viral completely. I think like 1,400 views in a couple days of people clicking onto the video. So you can imagine how many people scroll on the timeline and just read the synopsis of the game that I got with the stats. The next game they lost, there wasn't that many hits in the video, a couple hundred. The next game they lost. But then the final game they won, and all I did was take an 8-second video of the guy that was the lead scorer for them shooting a free throw, and it had over 1,000 views of an 8-second video. So I really think you guys should start looking into sports marketing in general, working with DECA, and other organizations within the individual schools, working with the principals and again with the committees. I really think there should be a movement now towards the digital age. I've personally been studying it since 1989, and there's a lot of things that I can extrapolate from that and hope I can get some feedback and tap into this knowledge base that I have and want to share with my own water. Thanks.
Thank you. I was in the card here from Luke. Is it Navarre, Navas? Navas. Vote, please.
Yeah, so I'm Luke Navas, and I'm a drum major here at Maine South, and I'd just like to speak a few words on Mr. Hutter, our new band director this year. I think whoever accepted Mr. Hutter as the new band director this year did a very good job, because I work closely with him every day as a drum major. And I think he's done a very good job adapting to the new school and keeping the traditions and different things that are kind of customary here at Means Health in terms of the band and while supporting the sporting events. Also, he's done a very good job in kind of reforming the band in terms of making it more efficient and kind of bringing a whole inclusive feel as far as the freshmen coming in. He's helped them a lot. And he's also very personally invested in his students. Like before class, he'll be talking with them instead of like come in right at the bell. So I feel like he can connect a lot with them because he's always around talking to us. So yeah, I think that was a very good choice, and I hope whoever's overviewing the choice of the new drama director, because Mr. Mew is leaving this year, so I hope you do a great job with that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Messer got something right. Good job, Mr. Messer.
I want the record reflect.
Let the record reflect. You won't find that bigger.
I would like to see Dr. Huffman have some student representatives in a board meeting. We've had 2 today from Maine South.
They're in class, yeah.
I'm so nice to be here and speak out. I'd like to hear that. She's here because she's here. It's
Free here next time.
all right.
No room for you.
Yeah.
Don't you make us proud.
All right.
You're gonna smile, not cry.
Correct.
If there's no more communications, can I have a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of student personnel, review of closed session minutes, appointment, employment, compensation, performance, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees, and collective negotiating matters? So moved. Second.
Fessler. Childers. Lee. Morales. Owen. Sullivan. McGrath.
Aye. Thank you very much.